under where it says presentation schedule, there is now a assignment thing at the bottom of that where you can upload your presentation. So I know Alton did his, and it wasn't ready for that, but you can upload it there now. And who else? Who else went on the last one? Who was it? Yeah. Yeah, so if you can upload it there too, that way I'll keep it all in one place. So today we have 2 presentations. Let's go ahead and start right now with Matthew, and we'll get started. This is about World War I and Germany.
Yeah.
Here's
Did I need to bring out like stuff to hand out? I still have on the syllabus.
Well, yeah, that's what I was wanting. I know you prepared something, but you can.
No, I handed out.
Is this it? Yeah, okay, I'll take care of it. You go ahead and get started. There are 2 different chapters in that book. Okay, let's get going.
Alright, World War I. How it began. Franz Ferdinand, who was a member of the Black Hand, which was a Serbian nationalist group. Yeah, basically. He murdered, assassinated, the heir to the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They wanted to basically unite all the Slavic people. They wanted to make Yugoslavia way before Yugoslavia even was a thought. Austria, obviously upset about this. They wanted to punish Serbia, and instead of taking a political action, they actually decided to declare war on Serbia. Russia, who was unwilling to lose the power balance in the Baltics, which is the area in southeast Europe, wanted to maintain their balance and their control over the area, so they declared war on Austria, which then made Germany declare war on Russia because Austria was Germany's only ally, and then France and Britain were Russia's allies, so then France and Britain declared war on Germany, basically just dominoes falling everywhere. This is kind of a cartoon showing, you know, if Austria attacks Serbia, then Russia will attack Austria, and then Germany will attack Russia, and then you got France and Britain running in the back there. And then it was the Allies versus Central Powers. On the left you have the Allies, and then on the right you have the Central Powers. The start of the war. They had to fight a 2-front war, much like they also did in World War II. But they had France to the west, which was viewed as much more of a difficult war. They felt like it was going to be a quick war. They said, Wilhelm actually said it would last 6 weeks. That's what he told his people. And they figured that France would be the hardest. But to the east, they believed that it would be easy because Russia had inferior technology and didn't have the transport to get their troops to the line quick enough. So they sent the majority of their troops to the west, and they only sent, I think the book said they only sent 1 battalion to the east, just in case they showed up early. And prior to the invasion, or I guess the battle with France had built up its defenses on the eastern edge of the country. So they used Belgium, like they did in World War II as well. But they actually thought Belgium would just let them pass, and then they would just walk right through. But Belgium actually put up a little defense for a couple days. It didn't last long, but it helped out a little bit. And then obviously they got through and then got bogged down in northern France, which led to trench warfare. It's because of new technology. it kind of made war a lot more deadly. So what they did is they would dig trenches and get inside of it, and then the enemy would dig a trench over there, and basically in between would be no man's land, and they would just shoot back and forth at each other, or just sit there for lots and lots of time, just basically doing nothing. They also had machine guns stationed in the trenches, so you couldn't really get out and attack the other trench, because I mean, if you're in no man's land, you're basically dead. And they built miles and miles of these, just all over the eastern edge of France and the western edge of Germany. There was a few offensive situations, but again, because of the new technology, it just made killing way easier, and there was a massive loss of human life. I mean, this is kind of an example of just how weird the technology, like how much the technology advanced and how they were still stuck in kind of at old times. It's an actual picture. A machine gun on a horse.
What's that? For Friday, we have that at our table. That would make everyone excited. Yeah, I kind of wonder, about the ears of the horse there, but
I would probably hurt its ears.
should we not just mimic it?
Should have what?
Just mimic the gun setting.
I don't know. Anyways, it's just how weird, how much technology advanced and how like they were still stuck in cavalry units with horses with machine guns mounted on them.
Really quickly.
I mean, I don't know. Weird situation. Anyways, the war continues. They were bogged down in the west. Because of trench warfare, there was no ground gain. They were just going back and forth, moving from trench to trench. It's just nothing really got done. They just kind of sat there. In the east, they were actually making steady progress, and the Russians did arrive early, way earlier than expected, and they only had 2 battalions over there at the time. But they started to gain a lot of ground, and they started to advance east into Russia. The British, after they declared war on Germany, set up a blockade to block any imports coming in to the German mainland, and Germany didn't think anything of this at the time, and they didn't try to stop it because they figured it would only be a 6-week war, and the blockade wouldn't affect them in 6 weeks. But since this war dragged on for so long, the blockade was starting to cripple Germany. It couldn't get any imports or exports in, and it was just crippling the economy. Oh, and Italy joins the war, which puts more pressure on Germany. They had a lot of military leaders that would come in, try to do something, not succeed, and then step away. I mean, the book says there was like 6 or 7 of them. The only ones that were really successful were the guys on the Eastern Front. I know the one's name was Hindenburg. I'm not sure what the other guy's name was. Yeah, that's what it was. Yep. They actually lost the Battle of Morne in the west, which kind of signaled the end, that they weren't going to win this war because they didn't have the necessary supplies and resources to continue this war, and because of the blockade, they really didn't have the kind of manpower and supplies to keep this war going. But it still lasted a while longer. Germany, they kept gaining ground in the east. They kept pushing into Russia, and they actually beat, I want to say, it was one of one of Russia's assets in the Baltics, and it kind of signaled that Russia was losing the war. And they also had submarine warfare. This was pretty controversial. You could blockade. It was legal because of an act signed in 1856, but the rule was, or the law, the maritime law was that you had to fire over the top of the ship and then investigate and see if there was any contraband on board, and then you could take the ship or what they had, but the crew had to be given back. They couldn't be all killed. Germany decided that this didn't apply to them because they had submarines, so they just started shooting down any ship that was in the British Isle area, which is what this is about. If it deemed it an enemy ship or said they were helping the enemy, they would just shoot it down, which was what happened when they sunk the
Lusitania.
Thank you, Lusitania. It was a British passenger ship, but it regularly traveled from London to New York and back and forth, made regular trips. It was actually carrying Americans at the time, and after the Germans sunk the ship, and a couple things after, but mainly because of that, they joined the war against Germany, which is in 1917. Russia fails. Russia, who faced many losses on their front and a huge loss of life, the economy was terrible, and there was lots of problems back home, which eventually led to the Bolshevik Revolution, which saw the Tsar fled and Vladimir Lenin taken over. He takes over and he works out the Treaty of Brest. Thank you. And it basically called for an end to the war for Russia, and it gave Germany a lot of land which it did not previously have. Germany, which realized that they were losing the war very fast, just because they could not get any supplies in, they couldn't get anything out. The blockade was crippling them immensely, and because of being a stagnant war on the Western Front and just having to send supplies constantly and manpower, they realized they couldn't win unless they started gaining ground. So they went for broke, and they devised a counterattack where they would try to push forward as far as they could towards France. And they did. They actually gained a significant amount of ground, but the blockade and the failing economy kind of showed, and they started to slow down, and then they just stopped. And then the Allies formed a counterattack and pierced right through the defenses and started marching towards Berlin. This led the leaders to decide that they needed to start an armistice unless they didn't have the manpower to stop an invasion or anything. And if they kept trying to go, then the Allies would take over Germany. So they decided to surrender, and the armistice was signed on November 11th, 1918. Following the war, there was lots of political turmoil. The government was incredibly bankrupt even before they had to pay any reparations. They for some reason they decided that they would take as many war bonds as they could and just promise them they'd pay them back after, which makes sense, but they didn't account for how much they took and how much they spent. So they were incredibly bankrupt after the war with no money and no economy. This obviously led to a rise in far right and far left parties. So the far right and far left are. Uh, the government signed a law which translate into the Patriotic Auxiliary Service Law, which was which basically gave the government a police state. They controlled wages, they controlled prices, they controlled what you could say. It was very repressing it was more of an authoritarian state that they were under, even after they gained a little bit of ground in political reforms in, I think it was 1916, around there. And then this act kind of cut it all out, so domestic reforms were very much needed. The economy following the war. Inflation was ridiculously high because Germany was unable to wage what is called a total war, which is a new thing because all aspects of your state have to be in the war. So like your economy has to be in the war, not just your military, but everything needs to be a total war kind of mindset. And Germany, their economy was not ready to wage this total war. They had a ridiculous lack of food and supplies. The government, because of the act, they decided that they would keep food prices low so people could still buy them and they could still send them to the troops in the line. But it got to a point where it was so bad that farmers were losing so much money having to buy supplies and sell them for so cheap that a lot of the farmers just up and left and got a different job, and this led to a huge lack of food. And obviously supplies weren't able to get in because they were blockaded and they had no way of getting anything. And the economy they were not ready to do this war. The German government thought that they would be able to win this war quick and it would advance Germany more, and they just didn't take into account how much this would affect the economy and everything like it. It got so bad at one point that 837 meat substitutes were patented. So, I mean, people were just trying to make anything that was close to meat, just so people would eat it. That's how bad it got. This obviously led to independent economic collapse. There's two ways that a government can, raise money during a war. They can raise taxes, or they can sell war bonds, which is, if it did both of them. But because they raised taxes, people had less money, and because people bought so many war bonds, and the government was unable to pay them back, that it led to huge debt, and the people just didn't have any money, and the economy was just slowly, or actually quickly, collapsing. All in all, the Germans lost 6 million people during this war, which is a pretty high number. And I think it was 1.8 million were, according to the book, were because of war, and then 6 million were just all together. The estimated cost for the German involvement is 175 billion marks, and that's in 1914 money, just to show you how much they really were in debt.
Mark's almost $2.
Yeah, that book said it was basically half that. Yeah.
Yeah,
$1.80. I forgot what the book said. I think the book said I don't remember. It was something. Yeah. They said it in U.S. money though. The German people actually hoped that this would bring about a golden age in Germany. They figured that if they go to war, they win quickly, it'll give them more power, and it'll keep that golden age that they had experienced prior to the war going. They were an industrial country. They were advancing rapidly, but they figured that doing this would bring them to be like the biggest modern industrial country, and clearly it did not happen. So people were just hopeless, and the government was falling, and Germany was in a lot of trouble, and we'll see what happens after this.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? I can do that. All right. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I mean, this was obviously what we've looked at so far is that the beginnings of the German rise to unification, which brings about the idea that they have imperialism. Okay. So we'll see then that as Germany is trying to build power, when Kaiser Wilhelm comes to power, he is going to really push that. That's what's going to lead to World War I. And many people have said that World War I and World War II are really two parts of the same war. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. We do have another presentation now today. Hope is going to give us a presentation now taken from the lead book, I believe chapter 2. All right. Okay. Here's the... All right.
Alrighty. Hi guys, I'm Hope. So this is the achievement and consolidation of power. This is mostly going to talk about Hitler and his rise to power. Please yell at me if you can't hear me. I have a very quiet voice. So, okay. So, the NSDAP became the second largest party in the Reichstag, and it gained about 107 seats. The NSDAP was the start of Nazism, and then Hitler assumes the post of Chancellor. He was defeated in the presidential elections by Hindenburg, and then of the same year, in January 30th, he assumes the post of Chancellor, which is one step below President. Hitler then calls for a dissolution of the Reichstag and increase the seats for the NSDAP, and it rose from 107 to somewhere roughly around 200 seats for the soon-to-be Nazi Party. And then Hitler's next objective was to start rearranging things to his benefit. So he rearranged the Constitution, and he started making his own laws because he was in power to do so. However, it was technically illegal because he was changing them for one benefit and one benefit only, and that was the rise of the NSDAP. In March of the same year, he achieved the rearranging of the Constitution, and he banned the KDP. They were supposed to be at a meeting, and they would have stopped his rise to chancellorship. However, the Reichstag fire had happened before this, and he blamed them with connections to this fire. Therefore, they were banned from attending the meeting. He also struck a deal with the Center Party, guaranteeing Catholic liberties in exchange for silence. So basically, he said, "Hey Catholics, if you keep quiet, we'll give you freedom." So it worked, because the church didn't have a whole lot of say in government. It definitely was separate, unlike our own government, where church and state are one. He then passed the Enabling Act, and the Enabling Act basically allowed Chancellor, as well as the Reichstag, to issue constitutional laws, pass their own legislation, and basically overstep the president and local government. And then in 1934, the Landtag, they were abolished. The Landtag is basically the state senate. So what would be like our state government where they pass laws just for those areas, Hitler's like, no, you can't do that. We're going to overwrite you, and now you're abolished. And then the trade union was replaced by the Nazi organization, DAF, which is the German workforce. And then in June, the Reichstag was cleared out completely, leaving the Nazi Party also to rise to power. And then the 30th of June, the military was eliminated in an event called Night of the Long Knives, where they were literally eliminated, not just disbanded from power. And then eventually the Führer came to be when they combined president and chancellor. And in some of my other slides, you'll see more of how Führer came to be and why, and it was due to the death of Hindenburg. So as you can see, some of my points are highlighted in different colors. The blue points are legal, the red points are definitely not, and the green points are neutral, so they could bend either way. So analysis 1 was how legal was Hitler's rise to power by January 1933. Hitler's appointment was within the Constitution. The laws are passed, however, the laws are passed by him. You can't write your own laws. It doesn't work that way. The process to make it constitutional was marked by collapse of the parliament. So anyone who could counter his rise was not able to do so because parliament was no longer there. It was just Hitler making his own laws. And then it was a very distorted and undemocratic use of the Constitution. And because of this, chancellorship was practically handed to Hitler. He didn't necessarily win it. Parliament democracy ended by May 1932, the year before Hitler would come to power. So that's a neutral point considering that it could have pushed Hitler towards chancellorship. However, Parliament did end, so there was nothing left to do but to write your own laws. And then Democrats, communists and Nazis, and the authoritarian minorities, so basically everyone else in the states, they were at a stalemate. They were all fighting between themselves, so it would only make way for one party to rise above the other if given the opportunity. And then chancellorship was handed to Hitler. He didn't necessarily dominate it or conquer it. He did win the election. However, back to the officers being banned from being there, that's not exactly legal because they didn't have ties to the fire. So we can't necessarily say that it was a true victory on Hitler's part. And the Constitution had not been completed or properly defined, so there was gaps where you could assume that this is the way that it was supposed to be, kind of read between the lines kind of thing. So was it legal? Yes and no. And then analysis 2, was there actually a revolution, a legal revolution between 1933, when Hitler gained power, and 1934? 1934 was when the Nazi Party actually came out and said, hey, we're Nazis, deal with it. Hitler emphasized the importance of revolutionary change to Germany. So he basically told Germany, hey, we're stuck in our ways, we're old, we need to change, we need to get with the rest of the world. And his options were limited because he was still under Hindenburg. While he was chancellor, the president still had power over him. And he had to make gradual changes. He couldn't just go ahead and start changing laws and writing things the way that he wanted them to be, because this could lead to his dismissal, or he could be overthrown by the military, which equals death in his case. He accomplished it step by step, and he did do so within the terms of the Constitution. However, as we know, Hitler's changing the Constitution, therefore they're his own rules. So he's within the Constitution, yet he's not. And then In April 7th, the law for the restoration of professional civil services was passed. So basically, non-Aryans were dismissed from the military. Hitler put his own people in there who he wanted to be, who he knew would serve him. And which is technically legal. Technically is a very loose term here. And then the next step was to pass laws against the formation of parties. So if you take away people's right to form unions, to form groups, to protest, that just gives Hitler more power because you can't step up against him. There is no parties to buffer him. Nazis are the only party at this point. The NSDAP, they're the only political party. And then after the death of the president, Hitler decided to merge his two positions. Instead of having someone be chancellor under him, because he's chancellor, he would then go to be president. But if he has chancellor, then he has someone undoing everything that he's doing while he's still trying to do what he's doing. So if he merges the two, then that's power to him. And then he used a safeguard, which it was only to be used in emergency. It's talking about military power here. So it should have been like an emergency. Should something happen to the government and the government has to protect itself, he made it into a regular process. So the military is at his disposal constantly. He can tell them to go jump and they jump. And then the Enabling Act also turned the Parliament and the Constitution on its head because it's kind of like a loophole here. So yes, the Constitution still stands, however, it stands to what Hitler wants it to say. So it enables Hitler to have more power and it enables him to be the only power. And then we talked about this, the states' legislations were abolished, the multi-party system was wiped out, and Hitler pushed against the Constitution, and what the Constitution was trying to prevent, he overstepped it. So it no longer prevents him from doing anything. And then it's really hard here as historians to dictate what is legal and what isn't, and what counts as terrorism and what is just the government trying to be a government. Because yes, it's a constitution, so it's how the government works. However, it's very terroristic, so you have a lot of things that are happening that shouldn't be happening, but they are, because it's within the Constitution. Hitler is in power. Hitler has the right to do so. However, his means of doing so is not so legal. And then after all legal measures are wiped out, the Gestapo can come in. The Gestapo is kind of like secret police. So if the government walked in here and it's like, hey, we don't like what you're saying, okay, we change it. They're the police. They can tell us what to do. It's like if the CSI came in here and it's like, hey, you need to change this. Government protection. CIA, thank you. Too many crime shows. But anyhow, so the Gestapo did rise, and it compromised the SA and the SS. The SA is a form of military. They're known as the Storm Detachment. I cannot pronounce the German. It is very difficult, and there's a lot of letters in there. But basically, they're the paramilitary team. Same with the SS. It's the Social German Workers' Party. So German workers, we overstep them and we overstep the military in this sense. And we can do what we want. We can tell you what laws to make. We can tell you how to act, how to be. And if you're not within that, then you're getting arrested. And that led to Hitler overall gaining more and more power. Every time that something was undermined or overlooked, Hitler gained more power, and that's how he came to be as a dictator.
All right. Any questions? Okay, we're just about out of time. So remember now, next week we meet twice. So we'll meet Monday and Friday next week. So we'll see you then. And keep watching my fire for the posts that I'll put there.
It would be on Friday this week, right?
Friday of this week is the Greek class.
Alright, so first thing I have to do is just
Okay.
light Wednesday. And then the paper topics, do you want that on my fire? I have them printed out.
Yes, on my fire.
Oh, please go, please.
Yeah, I'll put something up there so you can load it
Do
up.
you want this copy?
Yeah, that'd be great. I can look it over. Thank you.
Jabez is not here, and then